Welcome to the GreatBase Tennis Podcast. I'm Steve Smith. Episode 180. I think I need to do a 180 sometimes. You just turn and you go the opposite way. Got a great guest. We're going to call up Rachel Rohrabacher. She's 26 years young. She's based in Cincinnati, but she's from Tampa, Florida. She's the daughter of Lynn and Christy Rohrabacher. I worked with her from the age of 8 to 16 as a very impressive tennis background, but also now a very impressive pickleball background. So let me give her a call. Rachel Rohrabacher. Love that name. I'll review why I love that name. Strong syllables.
Hey, Steve.
Rachel Rohrabacher, thank you for being a guest on the GreatBase Tennis Podcast.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
And you're in Cincinnati.
Yes, Cincinnati, Ohio.
With former tennis player and now world championship pickleball player, world championship player with the Orlando Squeeze. Now, let me tell you, the listeners, I was talking to your mom on the phone, and she said, Rachel's starting to play pickleball. I said, oh, that's great. And at that time, I'm thinking, well, everybody started to play pickleball. And then someone told me to listen to the tennis podcast called Tennis Sucks. So I tune in, and just a few minutes in, I have it written down in my notes, paraphrasing perhaps. She's awesome. What an amazing draft pick. Have you seen her play? It goes on. And I go, so I have to really get into this. The real thing, she's awesome. Here you go. Have you seen her play? Amazing, unbelievable. She was such a smart draft pick. And boy, has she lived up to the draft pick. But I think we should cover both sports. But let's talk a little bit about the podcast Tennis Sucks, because the gentleman who stated that, I don't remember his name, but he's one of the founders. And when he does say that, he's asked about it, the first thing he said, I've heard him talk about it twice, is that tennis is a beautiful game. But in a lot of ways, I agree with some of the points he makes. But tennis not being such a healthy culture, I know you've obviously you lived it, where kind of the I, me scenario, the fun factor, it's such a difficult sport. I think also the homeschooling, sometimes it can be too much, but, if I were to be asked, some reasons why, would you say, hey, that's teenage lingo, you get people's attention though, and you say, tennis sucks. There's no backboards being built anymore because backboards don't make money. There's no ladders. It used to be there'd be a citywide ladder. With parents, they're paying more money for tournaments. The fees have gone up so much, the entry fees. And now they're playing, no ad scoring, tiebreakers, a 10-point tiebreaker for the third. Consolation sets her to 4, no ad. There's certainly an upside, but I think what we're trying to do with our free educational content, tennis needs to be more accessible and less expensive. But why don't you comment on that a little bit?
For the Tennis Sucks part, like the podcast, the co-host, he's very blunt, so he'll tell you how he feels for sure, but he's very good at looking at, both sides. Like you said, he says it's a graceful sport, but gets into reasons of why he believes it sucks. I think it's kind of hard for me. I mean, I'm in a great position to look back on my tennis career because I did live that, but it's hard for me to say tennis sucks because tennis has given me not only one but 2 careers, and it's I'm super grateful for the opportunities it's given me in my life. It was my whole life for the majority of it, so I think that it comes with a lot of hardship, familial, mental, physical, and developmentally. While there are so many positives that go into being a tennis player, growing up and being a full-time, homeschooled, which is what I was, all throughout high school, there are lots of good things, but also hard things as well. I think I actually didn't know that they made consolation sets before now. I'm very out of the junior tennis world nowadays. But I know that when I was in there, everybody pulled out a consolation. So maybe that's why they changed that. But I think that looking at junior tennis players now, when I do go by the courts and see them, I feel like there's a lot less commitment and talent. I don't know talent wise, but how about hard workers? I feel like the landscape of junior tennis has completely changed. I don't know if you agree with that or not.
Yeah,
but
no, I think you were at the crossroads where high school tennis just faded away. And I know some kids we're still helping some high school players. And I think it's great they have the experience to be part of a team. But it used to be everybody played high school tennis. And, that's one thing that's a downer. I think also too, the difficulty to learn how to play tennis and then the competency issues, a lot of times the parents, they don't really have consumer knowledge. They don't really know, they're blindly writing checks, but a lot of times the coaches, and I think we could branch over to pickleball. A lot of times the coaches don't have product knowledge. If they had product knowledge, they could produce, and you wouldn't have all these palm up serves. And I do think that the gentleman has the podcast, the co-host. He starts off tennis is a beautiful game, but the culture. And he did mention some close friends or a close friend, and how somebody or a couple of people really close to him, it didn't turn out too well for them. I said one time to Patrick Gibson's father, Patrick, he just played in the Australian Open, so he's been an achiever, someone I've known a long time. And I said to his dad, I said, tennis eats people up and spits them out. And he says, so is life. But I think that's there's a lot of positives to say about pickleball, but I think one thing about pickleball that it can be addressed as a negative is it's actually too easy. And I think we'll talk about how your pathway, and I really believe, and Sam Querrey said it, that if you have a really solid understanding of tennis, that you're like he said 90% prepared for pickleball. And I've seen so much pickleball instruction. I was in Florida the last 2 years. I was in Florida. My backyard, there was pickleball courts, a 64-acre public park. In fact, I saw Ryler DeHart and his wife, Megan. They were there one night playing, and people just parking lots jammed. There's people lining up to play pickleball, and there's a lot to be said for that. But to me, it looks like the wild, wild west. It reminds me of tennis in the 70s when tennis boomed. Everybody and their brother was teaching pickleball. And it's like everybody's, I shouldn't say everybody. It seems like so many people are like, this is my angle. This is what you have to do when you play pickleball. And the University of Virginia was just visiting where I'm based in the mountains in Virginia. They just came for a 2-day retreat. And we watched the girls play tennis one session and play pickleball another session. And some of them never played pickleball. And it was fun to watch them play. I mean, it looked like a tennis workout because they were good tennis players.
To comment on your thing of saying pickleball is easy, I think that, after playing now competitively for a year and teaching for probably 2 years, I think that tennis is harder to pick up and learn. The foundations, obviously, as I begin with you, I mean, it takes a very long time to get the foundations of tennis and the technique right so you can play. Pickleball is easier to pick up, but as the level gets higher, I think tennis is easier. The strategy of tennis is much easier to execute. And once you have the technique and the athleticism, you're able to apply certain strategies relative to your ability in games. But pickleball, I think, is you need very specific shots to be good, and the strategy is way harder to execute. So I think those are it's a misconception. I don't know if you saw the test tournament 2 weeks ago. Jeannie Bouchard tried to play, and she just lost to someone who's ranked 50 or something. Got beat very bad and did not do well in doubles. So, and Jeannie Bouchard's a class active woman WTA player, right? So it's I think that kind of also put to bed that debate of any pro tennis player could pick it up and be good.
No, I'm glad you said that. I think at one point lacrosse was the fastest growing sport in America. I think pickleball maybe first now, and it's good that young people are playing. I think pickleball can help tennis. I think that we've missed the boat. I think that tennis people, we should have been much more creative. And there's, say mini tennis and, people my age playing with the modern rackets. the ball obviously almost travels twice as fast as it used to with wooden rackets. But say
Yeah.
someone plays lacrosse. I went to a boarding school in New England, and we all had lacrosse sticks. And even the kids who never didn't play lacrosse like myself, we could catch and throw. But that didn't, so to become really good at lacrosse is like anything. It's just a major investment of time. But I do think that, pickleball, there's, a lot of times that people play it the first time, it's like they're swinging a fly swatter. And I do think that what tennis people should do, tennis coaches, tennis teachers, prevention of injury, to play either sport is deal first and foremost with the prevention of injury. And I think that if you're taught to play tennis, it's going to be more of a bridge to play pickleball than if you switch that around. If people just play,
For sure.
they play pickleball without any instruction.
And that's because of that like technique and foundations piece, right? Like if you have that already for tennis, it's easier to just pick up a pickleball paddle. But if you haven't played tennis and have been playing pickleball, it will not translate over.
But I think some lessons from pickleball that we could touch upon, coming back to the podcast, Tennis Sucks, is, it's great that and perhaps it's growing to the point where that's changed, but it seems to me that it's been more of a casual pickup sport. It hasn't been snobby where there's cliques. People, they'll play with anybody and they rotate, and it's like they play to 11. And it just seems like tennis, many times groups get caught in their foursome, and it's not as social as it should be.
For sure. That's like a really tough one for me, like, because I am used to that tennis culture of, you have your 3 other people you're with. So you have, for doubles, or if you're with one other person for practice and singles, and like no one really bothers you because they know that's your court. But I also have been a very highly competitive player in both. So maybe this is my culture, and neither sport has been socials for me. So I think this is where I get a little bit of confusion, because when I started playing pickleball, it's like pick up and open play, and it's super social. And so if you get a group of 4 time where like people are playing open play, they get super upset if they can't like rotate, and like it's kind of a weird thing because I'm taking it seriously and that's my practice, but these people are like, this is a social thing. So it's kind of a hard thing for me. It's been challenging to adjust to, but I've figured out a proper balance as I've continued playing. But that's like a very valid point. They are very different.
I think pickleball more at the recreational level. Obviously, we'll get into that, but you're playing at a professional level. You have to go about it. Obviously, quote unquote, you got to be a pro to be a pro,
right.
to be a pro. But on the recreational side, I think on the tennis side, not at the high competitive level, but if everybody played with someone once a week that was at a lower level, we'd have so much more tennis played. But I think a lot of times in tennis, it's like, well, I'm talking really like 3-5 club players to, call somebody up who's a 3-0 and say, hey, let me play with you once a week. And if we do that, I can help you out. And next year you could move up to the 3-5 league. But I think more of that should take place. But I think it's too cliquey.
Yeah, I agree.
With, let's go back. Let's start with tennis. You played before I met you. You started at age 6. I met you at age 8. I tell people, if you're going to ask Roger Federer about what he did at age 8, and I share a story about his first coach and working on static balance and what his mother said, where he stood in one place on balance with long follow-throughs, that yourself at age 8, this probably would be refreshing or interesting for you to hear, but at age 6, you had already by the time I met you, you could already play. I think you had a Russian coach, correct, initially? Do you remember that way back when? Croatian? Okay.
Croatian, yeah. His name was Vlado. He was at like our local public court, and he was great. He's an awesome guy. And he started me and another local girl who I lived close to. And and his son actually ended up teaching at a higher level as well. But he was definitely just like a beginner coach. He knew that.
I remember your mother used to come during the weekdays, but on your dad on the first Saturday shows up, and we had the dollar clinic. I guess we could set the stage. Hillsborough Community College, for the listeners, it's an amazing place in Tampa. It's right next to where the Yankees play baseball. I mean, you can actually, the back of the facility, you can look through the fence and see where the Yankees train for spring baseball. Beautiful stadium. Across the street, the Bucks, that's where their stadium is. It's a college campus. There's 12 clay courts, 16 hard courts. We had a large classroom, a cafeteria, weight room, gym. It was a pretty interesting setting. So we had this dollar clinic every Saturday morning. And actually, you can get more people to come to a dollar clinic than a free clinic because, people talk about it. Hey, it's a dollar clinic. So your dad shows up and he just wanted you to be drilling and playing with more players. And I said, well, you have to be filmed. And initially, your dad said, no, she doesn't need to be filmed. She just needs to play more. And obviously he's right in that sense. But I said, no, he needs to be filmed. They said, come back next week. And it was, 2, maybe 3 Saturdays. And we had so many courts. And so you'd be there for the dollar clinic. And I said, no, she can play. I'll organize the court and she can play with this person. He goes, well, what about training with a group? And I was firm. He was firm. And I said, no, she has to be filmed. Let me go off on a tangent. Your dad, I used to say, your father, Lynn, I said, he's an ex-Marine. And he would correct me and say, no, a former Marine. And I have a memory of, and I don't remember your mother and father driving a convertible except on really cold days. Did you have a car like a collector's car that you kept in the garage or something?
No, it was my dad's car.
Okay, so
it was like a BMW.
Right. So anyway, it's freezing out in Tampa, which doesn't happen very often. And I'm a wimp for cold weather. And I just remember your dad, when it was really cold. I guess that's why other times, it was the only time you put the top down. It was freezing out. And you'd be in the backseat. He'd bring you to practice. And I'm just thinking, it's so cold out. He's driving the convertible with the top down. But I'll go back to the video. But here's another story I tell about your father where and I took a group of kids not too many years ago. It was right before the pandemic. And we played the Jesuit school at HEC. And those backboards we had, they knocked them down. And that was just terrible that they knocked, especially that big tennis backboard we had. So you wouldn't remember this, I don't think, but every Saturday morning, the demographics of racquetball for sure, definitely people my age, but these gentlemen, they weren't acting like gentlemen. They would be playing handball. And I thought it was good because they were so intense. And I go, okay, the kids are going to hear a little profanity. You're not going to go to a junior tournament one time and not hear profanity. You hear the S word, the F word. So
for sure.
Every once in a while, a mom or dad would complain. They'd go in and tell someone that was working the front desk, and they'd come out. And no success. These guys would just be swearing, yelling at each other. So your dad comes over, and I never really saw your dad get mad, but I did see this intensity, and it was like a movie scene. So he comes over, and he tells those guys, he goes, hey, there's children here. Cut it. Quit swearing. Just cut it. And he walked away, and they were right back to yelling and swearing at each other. And then he came back, and I couldn't believe it. He just yelled a little bit louder, had his arms crossed, and he said, hey, I came over here once. I'm not coming over here again. You don't want me to come over here again. And then from that point forth, anytime your father was there, those guys wouldn't swear. And I mean, if there was one of them, there was like 20. Yeah. But you must have got some of your toughness from your dad. I mean, you probably faced a little bit of that intensity, correct?
Definitely. My dad, you don't want to mess with my
dad. I ask kids, raise your hand if you've ever got your parents upset. And every last kid raises their hand. But so anyway, your mother, Christy, she's a fitness trainer. She comes by and she said, and she was just teasing. She said, I may have to get a divorce, but my daughter is going to be filmed. And so anyway, we made the film. We would still have a copy of it. I would guess that you were back in the DVD days. We went from VHS to DVD, and now we just send private YouTube clips. What's your recollection of being videotaped the first time?
I do not remember that at all, to be honest.
Yeah. But your mother, it was well technique. And then, then obviously your parents saw the video. And next thing I know is that you were training with us full time. And your mother helped out so many ways. We had the largest program in Tampa, but we didn't really have that many local players. If you stop and think about it, we had the coaches' kids. We had, because it was a public facility, we operated in the spirit of the public. We had a hardship kids, and we had the junior college girls, which the rules allowed them to practice with our team. That's another whole conversation. Then we had boarding students. Back in the day, the rule was you could take a postgraduate year and take the whole year off. And we would always have, it was almost always boys that took the year off. And they ended up playing small college tennis for the most part. I mean, I'd say straight across the board. But so there was that group. And then we had local players. A lot of the local players, they wouldn't want to come in and do what we were doing. I remember one lady who, she worked as an umpire. She had two daughters that started much later than you, and they went on and played small college tennis. For listeners, Rachel played in the SEC conference, University of South Carolina. But the mother, we had people, hitting off the cone and drop hitting, and she came right up to me and she said, "This is so belittling. I am not letting my daughters do this." And she left. But she came back later, but it was like maybe a year and a half later, 2 years. And she had
That wasn't my mom.
No, not at all.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure I was like, no, wait, that wasn't my mom.
No. Is this another mom? She saw what we were doing. No, your mom, she was into it. She came to she came to the privates. Reagan, she would come prepared with an umbrella and crayons and toys. And
yeah,
he'd run on the court, and Coco, your dog, on a leash. And you would thump your brother, and a little bit of tough love, a little love tap. And you got into it hook, line, and sinker, but you had to change from palm up and change from Western to Eastern. And that's not easy, but you were 8. And of course, you wanted to compete, you wanted to play, but yeah, you did the hard yards with the technical side. But no, your mom would. I remember the kids that stayed at the tennis house, the boarding students. We'd have clear tubs that they would put their personal items in, their food. The first thing a 14-year-old boy is going to do is buy some Pop-Tarts and just buy junk. And then I remember she used to help the girls on the tennis team with fitness, and she told them they could have one cheat day. And it was just amazing. Every time they went to a restaurant, they'd all look at each other and go, "This is my cheat day." And just laugh. But but no, from a technical standpoint, I remember telling your father, I said, no, this is going to take a couple of years. And it's just a long, long process. But your parents were in after the video. But it's a lot of times people just don't understand. What do you mean? You got to make a video? And no, we document development. So then we certainly, you could dig through the archives and find that tape that we made for you when you were much younger.
I would love that.
No, but we've watched you play tennis on YouTube, or excuse me, I should say play pickleball. And, I made a list of 10 points. Could you guess what some of those points would be? Some 10 tennis points that are helping you in pickleball from a technical, tactical standpoint.
Definitely my Eastern grip. That's number one. That's what I lead with whenever someone, because it's funny, like a lot of people that I play pickleball with, they don't complain, but they're like, it's weird. They had to switch from a semi or a Western, and they're like, doesn't that sting? I'm like, no, I actually had an Eastern grip in tennis, so I didn't have to change anything. So that was really nice. Tabletop return and come in. Just like hand speed up at the net, I feel like has helped not only my hand speed, but just like what you always maybe go to the net and play points at the net. Like my feel at the net is very good, which translates to up on the kitchen line to third shot drop. I can't think of like too many other ones. I'm interested to hear what you wrote down.
Tabletop return. Let's go through that. It's a linear pattern. It's like the volley with the added follow through. A few years ago, where Federer was coming in, the saber attacking off the second serve. Joel Trucker was recently on our podcast. He's prolific, high profile writer within the tennis world, and he said the saber has been around for 100 years. The chip and charge, come forward. Actually, I remember who I trained, but I don't remember who I trained with who. Would you know? Ryler to Hart for sure. Do you know Megan Broderick?
Did she have a brother?
Yeah, Michael.
I think I remember Michael Broderick.
Yeah, so
more than
Megan, really good athlete. I mean, she was family of runners, and I can remember her working with Division I athletes or guys that were trying to get ATP points, and she would help them from a running standpoint. She played at Kentucky, then took a fifth year, and just because of her time, she could run cross country. But I remember that she could hit. We have all this on film. She was a great athlete. She was top 10 junior in the U.S. and she would play tabletop approach shots. So we do a coach's clinic, and so she's out, she's demonstrating. And I said, let me show you a shot that she doesn't play. And a conventional approach volley, she would play for sure. A volley she would play, but not taking the return. I would be fair enough to say she could take the return, come in as a tabletop, but not play it as an approach shot where you can keep the trajectory really low. And I said, well, here's a shot she doesn't play. And I remember her father, Tim, coming in and said afterwards, he said, my wife, Sandy, she was really mad at you for saying that in front of all those people. And I said, well, it really comes right down to it. Every day is not a golden day. And if you're, how's it go? I don't know the key to success, but I know the key to failure, make everybody happy. And Ryler to Hart, I used to show a film to Ryler. I said, Ryler, let's watch this again. And this guy does a great job in the Tennis Channel, the famous Armitage family, Prakash Armitage. So Ryler lost to him at Kalamazoo, and he went on and had a very good pro career. Like Ryler did as well. I mean, Ryler's a good player. If you get to play on Arthur Ashe against Rafa Nadal, you're a pretty good player. So
yeah.
But that, I used to show Ryler that clip of Prakash. I go, you don't play this shot. It's amazing. We were just watching Taylor Fritz, who's so good, top 10 in the world. He starts so well with the serve and the return. But, he gets Djokovic to hit a floater, and he letting the ball bounce. And a lot of it has to do with the grip. Doesn't have an Eastern grip. I mean, he's a great player, but the Eastern grip really gives you options. You can turn, like say Federer would be in the ready position, and you can, steal the ace, take the wall to the ball. But so that when we say tabletop, we do feel there's a lot of dying arts, lost arts in tennis. But the loops, how you have the racket up high on both sides, you go through a ritual on your serve. I don't know if you're aware of that, but when you play, the clips that we've looked at, you bounce the ball, or you go through a movement like you're looking to serve, and then you just turn and drop hit a forehand.
So I just changed from closed stance on the serve. And when I first started, it just carried with me because, when you bounce the ball and you put your left hand under your right, that's how I would start. But to get a little more action on it, I changed it to an open stance. So it's like I'm hitting a forehand as the serve. But I have to go back and forth because they're tinkering with some rules on the serve, which is really frustrating. But yes, I definitely do that whenever I'm closed stance, and everyone makes fun of me for it in the pickleball world.
Say that again. What do you do with your stance?
So, a serve is like closed stance and in tennis, and can be in pickleball. So I started with it closed, and to actually get a little bit more action on it, meaning depth and a little bit more pace and arc on the ball, I moved to open stance. So it's like I'm hitting an open stance forehand, because you have to make, on the serve, you can't make contact higher than your waist. So I just drop the ball and hit it kind of like a forehand cross court, which has helped me way more than sticking to a closed stance, which it was very hard for me to do because still mentally I'm still tennis brain sometimes, not full pickleball brain yet. So
I've been doing some homework for this podcast. I saw where the rule on serving, you have to keep your hand like at waist level and then drop the ball, correct?
yes. So the original, and I won't get too much into this because it's ever changing. So the original and still rules were that you have to make contact below your waist. This year, they started our first tournament out with changing a rule to we have to have our palm down and we have to drop it and hit it out of the air. So we can't like lift our hand or toss the ball when we have our palm down. It has to just like release. And it makes you feel super unathletic, and it makes a referee's call super subjective. So one ref might call you for a fault, and if you do it wrong, you lose the point. There's no second serves, or they just make you lose the point. So it's been a little bit of a debate in pickleball since that tournament. It's not very well liked, and I don't really understand the reason for doing it. It's not like anybody's really acing anybody in pickleball. I think some people would disagree with me because they don't want the serve to be a weapon, but I think like that's part of your talent and what's in your bag. Like if you can make anything a weapon, like that's your ability to do so, and if it's legal. So it's a little bit of a debate right now.
With a couple other things. Besides the grips, the unit turn, like when you're moving to the corner, I mean, you have the left hand on your forehand. It's so important. Now you can't always do that because when you're on the dead run, you pump your arms. But if you have the opportunity to get in the corner and set your left hand on the racket, it'll help you relax the muscles in your, say, a right hander, relax the muscles in your right arm, have a short, compact swing. I mean, keeping the swing on the same side of the body. I've said this just observing. I did go to one instructional clinic, but I've just observed so much pickleball that the kitchen, it definitely promotes swing volleys more than conventional volleys. Why don't you comment on that?
Yeah, that's when you first start going from a tennis player to a pickleball player, naturally at the net, you're hitting volleys like you've been taught, especially coming from Tennis Smith. We were taught you made us like have very, very short swings, like no swing on the volley at all. Like it's just like a punch, you meet the ball. So going to pickleball, it felt wrong. Hitting quote unquote what's in my head, a ball out of the air is a volley. But technically in pickleball, it's there are so many different types of balls you hit out of the air because of how small the court is and where you play it at. So it was a big adjustment, but it was an adjustment that I actually found to make because I like hitting the ball as hard as I can, and the swing allows me to do that.
Well, no, I see you play, and I just remember so many things. It just takes a minute when you've spent so much time. I mean, age 8 to 16, with the ratio of balls hit. So a younger player is always going to hit more ground strokes than volleys. And then for the listeners, Rachel grew up in a program where if you served and stayed back, the whistle would blow and you'd be sent to the technical courts. And no one wanted to go to the technical courts. People would rather play doubles. And, we would play one bounce doubles. And, way back when, Agassi really helped revolutionize tennis in so many ways. Because Agassi, when he came on the scene, he did not hit a conventional volley. He just swung at everything. But I remember where it was like taboo to have someone play a swing volley. But no, in watching you play, I think even on the backhand side, you could lift up more on the swing volley. You just can't keep going forward. You have to stop at that line. So you can't use you can't use a momentum source of power. You have to stop at that line. So it just forces people to play a swing volley. But you're fortunate that you through all those years of having short, compact swings.
Yeah, and I mean, it not only forces you to stop at that line, but a huge adjustment coming from tennis to pickleball, especially because I was someone who stayed up on the baseline in tennis. I took balls off the rise. I was like, I tried to get to the net. That was my game. I drove, and I wasn't like a stay 10 feet off the baseline and make our points 50 shots long. I did not do that as a tennis player. Definitely don't do that as a pickleball player. So the translation is it's quite different on timing. You have to wait for the ball. It's such a weird adjustment, but you have to wait like an extra second or two. It feels like a lifetime, but you can't rush it. And if you watch Jeannie Bouchard play in her first tournament, which I assume she was practicing, who knows? But she was just rushing everything. Like the ball would bounce and she'd be trying to take it off the bounce, and you can't do that in pickleball. So it's a weird, not only that kitchen momentum piece, but the timing piece of like trying to get to that ball and rushing it.
Yeah, to come back to that, I do think there's, always that issue of respect. I think it's disrespectful for people to just think that overnight they can play high level
Totally.
pickleball. But with, again, the list, I told Yvonne, who I work with and sharing information, our free content is, say, for example, you hold the line many times where you don't play to the open court. You play up the line, and then you close in where you have the open court. So there's tactics involved as well. First opportunity to go forward. I mean, the competitive spirit. I think a lot of times, obviously, just like in singles or doubles, to the middle solves the riddle till you get the right ball.
100%.
I mean, pickleball, you got to have the soft hands. I mean, it really forces you to play what we would call in tennis the movement for a half volley. Where you're just trying to keep the ball low. I think you use the term dinks, right?
Yeah, but I mean, there are some shots I'd call a half volley, and again, it feels so wrong because I know in tennis, like a half volley is kind of death. Like you don't really want to be hitting a half volley. I wouldn't say you want to be hitting a half volley in pickleball either, but the court is so small. And when you're caught in transition, it happens a lot more often than in tennis. So you had to get used to that uncomfortableness, and it's actually something that happens more commonly. And sometimes, like, you just have to be able to get out of it. It's more of a defensive thing, in my opinion. When I'm doing a half volley, it's not offensive. I think a lot of people would agree with that, but I don't know.
Yeah, I think with another thing too with the fixed wrist. So on your forehand, many times now in tennis, what's gone away is teaching the follow through. Everything. Well, no, that's not how the pros play it. But people don't use high speed film. If you use high speed film, you just to slow the players down, to show them what really happens in that tracking motion, the hitting zone. So what we do very quickly is we'll tell people, okay, let's have you hit a forehand volley, conventional volley, and okay, hit, hold, and the wrist is fixed. Now hit a ground stroke where you're going to relax the swing over your front shoulder, relax from your elbow, not from your wrist. But then when you tell people, okay, let's work on hitting a off-pace passing shot or a topspin lob, and you do this when you play pickleball to get more spin on the forehand side, you bring the racket where it comes up over your shoulder. But there's so many things that, if people are taught fundamentally sound tennis. I told, a group of high school kids, I said, one of the reasons you want to really learn to play tennis right now is it's a bonus because now there's a second sport you can play. You can play tennis. Yeah. You can play tennis and pickleball.
Absolutely.
Some people refer to that as a reverse follow through. One thing, Rachel, on these podcasts to help out tennis people, go back a little bit to tennis. I can say this is that your parents followed my advice. Of course, you had the privilege, the bonus of growing up in Florida, where the weather's nice and there's both hard courts and clay courts. But I remember telling your parents that you didn't really need to leave Florida until the last year of 16s. And then you ended up getting a scholarship. I said, no, your daughter's athletic. She's competitive. She just keeps working on skills. I do think many parents, they travel all over the place for, 10s, 12s, 14s. Why don't you comment on that? What's your recollection of that?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, when I went to you at age 8, I think, I don't know how many years, I think it was years plural, at least 2, where I was just like we were just doing everything for technique. I mean, I still got to hit balls, but like it was a lot of cone work, a lot of basket hit, like not too many balls like coming at me from another person until I got everything down, which makes sense looking at it. It's a lot of hard work, but you were like no tournaments until I get my technique down, which looking back was, I mean, the best thing you could have done because I wasn't worried about winning, you know, because when you're out, when it comes down to it, especially if you're as competitive as I am, if you're going to be on the court, you're going to find a way to win, whether that's the right technique or wrong technique, especially at a young age. So I didn't really play any tournaments until probably 12, 13. I could be wrong, but I don't think I played many 12. Maybe that was when I started getting into it a little, but 14s was when I started playing more tournaments. Am I remembering that right?
Yeah, I'll put it on our Facebook page. Barry Henn, he wrote I think it's like 80 pages of narrative on our program, and you came back from winning the Florida Open, a national tournament, and it's kind of, you know, I called you out, and we went through all the basics, and I said, all right, national champion, you got to work on this still and work on that still. But yeah, I need to ask you because my son Connor, when he started to play pro tennis, you know, everybody has to find a way to pay their bills. So I sold the real estate I had where I could house players. So your last 2 years, you could talk to us about that. I didn't work with you those last 2 years, but we always say, like the Jesuits, just give us the first 7 years. I spent, you know, a little bit over that length of time with you. But your father, I remember he really got into filming matches. And then in doing some homework for this podcast, I ended up seeing many clips on YouTube from way back when. And, you know, not sure if it was a private YouTube channel or how I ended up getting this. There was just quite a few matches of you playing on film.
I know what you're talking about.
And I remember your father saying that he said, I really understand what you say now when you say winning's not confusing. It's totally confusing because you went through a phase where, you know, it was just drilled into you that when the ball's short, you go forward. Of course, when you're 13, 14 years old, you go forward to lose at a faster rate because you're going to get passed and you're going to get lobbed. I mean, you used to really hit heavy approach shots, and you would do just that. We just made a pretty deep study of this. Alex Mickelson, who's done so well at the Australian Open, and Mark Walpole, who spent 2 years going through our training program where you get a college degree many years ago. He did it with his partner Nash. They did a lot of hard yards with Alex Mickelson, and you know, he stays in the pocket. He doesn't run around his backhand from anywhere in the court. You know, you can run around your backhand, but wait till you're inside the court where it truly is in the offensive area of the red zone. But yeah, winning's not confusing. It's totally confusing. So I think in those developmental years, the parents listening to this is your parents, they got a really good handle on the big picture where it's not so much what you do in the 10s, 12s, 14s, but if you want to play college tennis, by the time you're, you know, going to be a junior in high school, you definitely need to be on the radar where your tennis is improved. And, but when you won that Florida Open, that was, at that time, it was, you weren't leaving the state to play other tournaments, but yet being in Florida, you certainly had a chance to, like say at the Orange Bowl or the Eddie Herr. I remember one year you went pretty deep in the Eddie Herr where you had a chance to play people from outside of Florida, outside of the United States as well.
In the 14s I did. I got to the finals and played a Croatian and another one. I don't know where she was from. Maybe they were both Croatian. But I didn't start traveling, you know, financially also too, right? Being in Florida is such an advantage because it's its own region. I think there's only I think California's even split in two. So Texas and Florida are the only states that its own region, and California is split up into two because it's so large. But I think that's a huge advantage. I don't know if I think that that helped me a lot, especially making it for my parents to be able to take me. But you know, I don't know if times have changed though. I think they have, where kids can start taking official visits by sophomore year maybe now. So, I mean, maybe the times have changed a little where you got to be on the radar maybe a little earlier. But if you're in a big region, I think it's not necessary to have to travel. And especially Florida's got most of the nationals in it now. So if you're in Florida, I mean, you're kind of set.
I like the line from Tracy Austin. She says it about pro tennis and college tennis. Um, parents need to realize that, top level coaches, you won't find them; they'll find you. That makes sense. So you're, it's
Totally.
not, people will ask, well, Steve, all these coaches, could you make a phone call? I go, yeah, I can, but,
they want you, they'll reach out.
Well, you have to have a lot of wins. I mean, it used to be tennis recruiting. Before it was the USTA ranking, and then it was tennis recruiting, and now it's the UTR. Then also too at HCC, I mean, 28 tennis courts. So the boarding students, you got to the point where you could play. You're playing with a lot of boys. You got to the point too, and it was tough on the girls. I mean, one year they won the nationals. I think they were in the finals 3 times. The team got better and better. You remember Chad Burial, your mother was helping Chad as well. And, Chad just recently won a national tournament at the Division II level. But with that, it was pretty tough on the girls because, we'd have some in-house matches and the girls would play, someone like yourself when you were, you were 13, 14, you would have been in the lineup on that ACC team. The level of play got better and better. Typically, the depth wasn't there at the 5 and 6 spots. So you certainly had plenty of people to play. But I do think that, that's one thing that the UTR was supposed to do is matches were supposed to be ageless and genderless. So the boys, really Billie Jean King said that forever. Even into the 14s, the boys and girls could play together. There doesn't need to be 2 different divisions. By the time you get into the last year's 16s, the boys end up having a little bigger serve. But tell us those last 2 years when you spent quite a bit of time with us, but those last 2 years, who you worked with and how that helped you get to South Carolina.
Yeah, I think I worked with David Hinkle and a place called in Brandon, Florida, called BSAC. I don't know if it's still called that or even still there. I'm still very close with Damon, who's actually my pickleball coach. But he was just great. It was perfect because he was the exact opposite of you, which is like, I needed you for that foundation and for the beginning of my career. And then Damon was like, I mean, he definitely was not much emphasis on technique. He knows it, but I don't think he chooses to want to be that type of coach. He's like he got me fit. He got me moving so light and well on the court, which was exactly what I needed because I think that jump from 14 to 16 and even 16, 18 is like it's a faster game because everybody's growing and getting stronger. And he helped me just like strategically, really, he worked on my strengths. He made certain things just like make sense for me and see things in a different way, which was great. And he was just really positive. Also, like something I'll never forget from him was that I won a lot of sportsmanship awards back in my day, which if anybody who actually knows me in my second half of my tennis and pickleball life know me, that it's shocking, but I actually used to win a lot of sportsmanship awards. So I came home from a tournament and I don't know what I placed, but I placed and also came home with a sportsmanship award. And he said, don't you ever come back here with a sportsmanship award ever again. And that was really funny because that's just stuck with me. Like I'm out there to win. Like I'm not going to be nasty and I'm not going to cheat, but like I'm going to be out there to win. Like I'm not being nice, being like, here's your ball. Like go get your ball for you. Nice shot, nice try. Like I'm not doing that.
Well, that's where I I know your father so well and your mother so well is that, you needed to have the face look, the game face, the same look your dad had when he talked to those handballers.
For sure. Yeah,
just a look that could stop an oncoming truck with, No, I think a negative and you referred to our program as Tennis Smith. I haven't heard that name in a long time. Tennis Smith School. We called our program that for 20 some years, but obviously it has some ego in it with the name Smith. And we just, now it's GreatBase curriculum, and we had the GreatBase curriculum. We were working on that starting back in '81, but with, during the time that you trained with us, I think a negative could be teaching to the lowest denominator. You're in a classroom setting, and that's where some kids can hold other kids back. So we would, and I still to this day have people come to me where our job is to reinvent their game. You would remember that people come in and they're filmed, and
absolutely they come in from all over the world.
Yeah, they come in for a week or 2 weeks, and the negative for that was because there's been times in my career way back when where I didn't have people flying in to work with me, and then you can have a squad. Then you can say, okay, let's run. And that's the area of tennis that I know the least about, but I certainly don't have a problem blowing the whistle and making people run and such. There's a film of your mother running a running session on her course, Tennis Intelligence Applied. Do you remember Eric Oosterhouse, who went to Harvard?
Erica Oosterhouse?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do.
She played soccer, had a knee operation. Her mother was going through law school. She wasn't a lawyer at that time. And I said, hey, let me teach you. Because then we also had that. We had tennis teachers who were always visiting. So we taught her to play. But your mother's running a beep test, and she's in there. But she got to the point where she's playing soccer, but she had good grips and good swings. And it wasn't. That's a good lesson for tennis parents listening too. Is that she, because of a knee operation, she said, okay, I'm going to play tennis. And she played at the level where she could play at Harvard.
Right.
That makes me think of some other clips. I know there's more than 3, but there's, I can dig these out and send them to you, put them on Facebook, Rachel Rohrabacher. We have kids drop hitting balls to a basketball hoop. And we always tell people your target is small and elevated. And you're one of the kids in that clip, and all the kids in that clip went on and did really well playing college tennis. Because when people play tennis, they see their target through the net and they think the tennis court's gigantic, but it's it's less than 20 degrees wide from the baseline. Another one, we have a quadrant tournament. Well, we have the tiebreaker test when people come in. We feed 6 shots. You would remember that, and if you hit 6 shots, you win the point. But we get everybody in line, and everybody gets so pumped up to do the quadrant tournament. They don't get so pumped up to do the tiebreaker test just by themselves, or they're sharing a court with a partner and they alternate who feeds, who hits. But you're pretty young, and there's some older players in that, and you win the quadrant tournament. So you have to hit a forehand volley cross court in the service box. So that's round 1. You make that, you're live. You miss, you're out. And then people start dropping like flies. So the next shot, sequence of shots, there's 2 shots in round 2. You have to hit an approach shot in the far quadrant straight ahead, come in and angle the ball in the short quadrant cross court. So there's 2. And then the third round, it keeps going. You got to hit cross court in the far quadrant, and then you go down the line. And every time you miss, you're out. And there's another time where you had fallen off of your bicycle and you couldn't play two-handed. There's a clip of that where you're just hitting a one-handed underspin approach shot. And that's certainly a shot that people don't hit anymore. But no, I could see that. Also, too, I think once someone has a base, and then as long as people don't mess with the base, as long as people are not changing your forehand and changing your backhand, I think it's very good to work with a number of coaches. But in the early years, I mean, too many cooks can spoil the broth, and you just don't want to be 15, 16 years old, ideally, and having to make grip changes and swing changes.
Right. I mean, that would have been awful. I think I was very fortunate, to have had all of that done at such a young age before I started playing tournaments. And then by the time I was with Damon, again, I don't know if he would have if I didn't go to you, if he is capable of if he would want to do technical stuff. I know he's capable of it, but I don't know if he'd want to, but He didn't have to touch any of my technique. Like nothing he did with me. I think he like helped something like a hitch in my overhead that I developed on my own, but like he touched nothing technical. So
Oh, it's really,
all that was taken care of.
it's brain memory. I mean, you have to be programmed. I know that your mother got along with everybody, and I think you getting the sportsmanship award, that's where you people are a reflection of both their parents, their mother and their father. And your mother would, always have a smile, and kids would be messing up, and she'd laugh, say, "Oh, they're young." And with I didn't quite see it that way that often. But anyway, the Sullivans. I remember the youngest Sullivan.
Jamie.
Jamie was a really good runner, and he used to help my son Connor try to break such and such mile time. Another Jesuit kid who I believe Connor Bluen was in the Olympics as a sailor. I was told that.
Wow.
I never really confirmed that, but I remember him helping Ryler to Hart, because Ryler, like my son, their strength was not running the 12-minute run or trying to break the 5-minute mile.
Right.
But the middle girl, Kelly, she went on and played at Furman. I mean, so she was a very accomplished player. And I think the oldest daughter played at a school up in Connecticut. But Heather, the story for tennis parents, they went to work with Chuck Creasy, who's a great coach, but he's more of the college coach format. And there is it's like Roger Federer said, it's great to have or he said, I had the right coaches at the right time. And really the great base ideally is for kids that are under the age of 12 and they really need to establish the foundation, the fundamentals.
Right.
So, Heather is from South Carolina. So they went to Chuck Creasy's camp, and then Tom Gilly, who was a student of mine, and then for 2 years, then he worked at Vandermeer's for 15 years. And she said, "Oh, you learned all your tennis from Dennis." He certainly learned a lot of tennis from Dennis. And he said, "No, I learned from a guy, using my name in third person. I learned from a guy named Steve Smith." So Heather called me up and she said, "I want to apologize." And I said, "About what?" And she said, and this is for everyone. And she said, "We started the course. We should have stayed the course." There's so many people that they work on basics, and then they think, well, now I can move on. But you never really want to you don't really want to totally move away from basics. I saw you play at a couple NCAA tournaments where you still had the foundation, and you still have it while you're playing pickleball. So tell us about going to South Carolina.
That was just an amazing experience. It's kind of jarring to think that I've been out of college longer than college was. But my coach was Kevin Epley there. I think he taught at a couple schools before being at South Carolina, and he also taught some people on the tour, I believe. He's a big. Oh, go ahead.
No, sorry to interrupt, but yeah, I've been introduced to him, but you're introduced to a lot of people in tennis, but I don't know him. But yeah, he's at William and Mary. I'll just go through this.
Yeah.
He has a very impressive background. Coach Davenport, and through connection with Billie Jean King, he was an Olympic coach, a Fed Cup coach. He worked at Bollettieri's. Megan Moulton Levy, I haven't seen her in a long time. I understand that she's on the board of directors at the USTA, but another coach sent her to me. She came a couple times to, work on the backhand volley, work on the serve. But he traveled with her for 4 years. But when you were there, they were top 5 in the country, right?
So when I got there, they weren't, but when I left there, they were.
Tell us about that culture. I mean, obviously he's been very successful.
Kevin's great. I mean, he big double specialist. I think that's mostly. I mean, I was very successful by the end of my junior tennis career, so I'm not going to say this is mostly why, but Kevin loved people who were good in doubles. He put so much emphasis on doubles. Like I promise you, so many of our practices that were like 2.5 hours long, we did warm up and like doubles drills for at least an hour of our practices. Like he was very serious about doubles. So I think that really played to my strength as a tennis player. And he also just again enhanced. Like he really embraced my game, encouraged even more, like maybe adding, because I never did a kick serve. I think maybe that came from you and my dad. I'm not sure, but I never really had a kick serve. So he tried to help me do that from the ad side and serve and volley sometimes. And he just created such an amazing bottom to top culture, bottom up, I guess you could say. When I got there, they were still figuring stuff out. I think we were a top 30 team. I was pretty injured my first 2 years, and then by my junior year, that's when I started to play. I went about undefeated for the whole SEC season, and we got ranked. I don't know if we got ranked into top 10 by the end of that year. We did very well. And then by my senior year, I think I got ranked in doubles up to 9 in the nation, and I was playing very well. And we won the SEC, and we got to the Elite 8 that year, and we got ranked up to 3 in the nation as a team my senior year. So, I mean, he just created this, again, helped us get to a place where everything was coming from us. And like when I was a junior and senior, we kind of ran a tight ship. Accountability was huge. Conflict resolution was huge. And I mean, I think that's just so important. And I think even translating to like team things and what I've been doing since college, not only pickleball, but I got a master's, like everything that I just firmly believe in everything he did with us as a team. I just want to continue doing things like that because it was just so successful, and it's just how things are supposed to be, and people don't understand it. It's crazy.
With University of South Carolina, I was on the campus one time. I was in Florida with one of my brothers. My brother Pat, he played golf at the University of South Carolina.
Oh wow!
There's a girl from Tampa. Do you know Miranda Gutierrez?
I don't think so.
She's much older than you, but her name's in the record books, like your name's in the record books. She won quite a few matches. I remember I used to give her lots of private lessons, and she used to go to I think it was the Palmer Academy, but I was gave her privates. Seth Rose, I taught. He was an All-American. He's on he's South Carolina University Hall of Fame. I know Carlos Goffey well from years gone by, but his son Josh, I saw him one time, and I'd asked him about you, and he was very positive, loved you as a competitor. But he said that you had helped him with a camp at one time.
Yes, we did the summer Wilson camp. I spent a lot of time with Josh. I think I did that at least 2 years, maybe 3. Those were a grind. So
he's been very successful as well at South Carolina.
Yeah, when we were there, the men were not successful, but I don't really keep up, which is a little sad. I don't keep up too well with tennis nowadays. But I did know that the men's team did phenomenal since I've been out because they had, I don't think Paul Jubb's there anymore, but Paul Jubb's doing really well. He's going pro now, and they have a couple other guys who were like Connor Thompson, who got a wild card into Wimbledon doubles, and they have a few really, really good guys. So
I saw Paul Jubb win the NCAA tournament.
He's so good.
But you had some injuries. Your first 2 years, back problems and shin splints. You didn't play that much as a freshman, sophomore, right? Because of injuries.
Yeah, I played doubles my sophomore year, but I had just a slew of injuries. My freshman year, we ran too much and he ran us into the ground, which he would admit was not the right thing to do, especially like coming in. I was running a lot before it, and I got really bad shin splints and had some stress fractures in my shins. So I actually had to wear like switch a boot on my legs because I have them in both, and you can't walk around with 2 boots. And then by my sophomore year, I ended up getting mono, and I was very sick. And then I didn't get the flu shot because I had mono in the fall. And then I ended up getting the flu in the spring. And then by then, I mean, understandably, Kevin was like, well, like you haven't played at all. You're not going to play now. Like, I mean, I'm not going to put someone who hasn't played matches in. So that made sense. I played some doubles, but that was about it. And then my junior year, I was struggling with back issues. But I still played every match. But I was struggling with them, and I still struggle with back issues to this day because of a certain event that happened there, which I won't get into. But I still struggle with that. And then my senior year, I still played, but I had to take about 4 weeks off in the beginning of the spring season because I had a grade 2 or 3 tear in my abdomen. I had to go in for a PRP. So I was definitely through the ringer throughout my college career with injuries.
But you hung in there with the junior year. I've got down here, you were 40-7. It's a record. Won 0.851, almost 90% of your matches. 20-4 in singles, 20-3 in doubles. But no, it's great. I mean, injuries, I think one thing that is a positive about injuries, they let you know how much you really love the game when you're sitting on the outside looking in, huh?
I think, and this is something I've learned, I didn't know it at the time. I played tennis for so long in my life that it defined me completely. And that's another topic. But I think when I stopped playing tennis, I was okay with that. I was okay with being done with tennis. It was sad. And of course, it's a little emotional because that was a huge chunk of my life, right? I started at 6 and played till I was 22, 23. But I missed competing and missed my team, obviously. But the competition was what was keeping me alive in tennis. I don't know if I loved tennis that much by the end of my career, but I knew I loved competing and I wanted to compete with my team. So that's what kept me going. And obviously, pickleball has given me an outlet to compete even more. I think I was most upset about not competing anymore. So,
talk a little bit about the grind as far as being a student athlete, going to practice, that time commitment, and then the academic side.
Yeah, I mean, I said this in so many little panels I did for community service. I mean, the thing you will learn if you have not learned it by college time is time management. That is the most important thing. And another thing that's hard to grasp, but it's very true, is that you're a student athlete. So you're a student first, and then you're an athlete. If you don't have good grades, a certain grade, you can't compete. And think about it like this: if you're not going to go pro, or if you don't want to, or maybe if you have injuries, anything can happen. And you put the athletics before being a student and your future, like really, you need to focus a lot more on the school piece and prioritize that. Well, you need to find a good balance. It's not just you're there to play your sport, which is what I thought I was there for. And then you quickly learn. So I'm grateful that I learned that quickly, but it's a very common misconception, I think, when you go into college after playing. I was homeschooled because of tennis. I prioritized tennis. I got behind in classes because I went to tennis tournaments in high school. And I was like, well, it's okay. I'm going to play tennis in college. I'm going to play tennis. I'm going to have a scholarship. Like, it's fine. And then when you're in college and you're like, oh, wait, like there's a life after this and there's a life after tennis, I should probably focus a little bit more on my education. So I'd say that's the most important thing. And balancing it is something, it's going to be different for everybody. And there's a way to be social and play tennis and be a good student. I promise you. You just have to find what works for you.
You spoke so highly of Kevin Epley, how he's not only helped you then, but what he did at that time. You obviously stated it's going to help you through life. What about all the other people, the assistant coaches, the trainers? Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, the assistant coach, his name's Jeff Nabolo. He's actually the head tennis coach for women's tennis at SMU. I actually have stayed with him him and his family twice last year for pickleball tournaments. So I still have a great relationship with Jeff and Kevin. But Jeff I've seen him more recently and consistently. He was more on my court throughout my career. They were a great balance to each other, and as coaches and as people and their roles for us as a team. And he spent way more time with me. Like, he was always on my court when I played matches. He was just perfect for me, like a perfect fit when I was competing. He was great. And he was also more into, like, after I got injured in shin splints, he was actually the one to bring a whole new concept to our fitness. He brought heart rate stuff into it. So we would do biking, and he was just way more aware of like our joints, and there's ways to work out and be fit without running 3 miles, mile repeats at certain times and having to run a mile under 6:30. Like, he was like, this is ridiculous. Like, people are getting injured. So he played a big role in that. And the trainers, I loved our trainers, but we didn't really have the same one throughout my whole time. I think it was like an athletic training program. So we had a different one every year, but I spent a lot of time in the athletic training room. I think if I could look back at my younger self and I'd tell her one thing, it would be to stretch before and after every single time. I was told that so many times, but it was by older people. And I thought, I'm never going to get old. I'm never going to be hurt. And I always was. And now I'm hurting all the time, and I'm only 26. So I think that take advantage of your PTs. If you go to college, like, take full advantage, like, of the athletic training room, stretch, take care of your bodies. And one thing I miss so much about being a student athlete is having that. I think now I always got my cup. I got my back cuffed. I don't know if you know what cupping is, but it's a modality of recovery. And I got it cupped every other day. And when I graduated, I'm like, who's going to be cupping my back? Because it's really tight right now, and I don't know what to do. So I still don't have anybody to cut my back, and it's been 4 or 5 years, but we're working on it. But
you don't have a trainer with pickleball that's doing that for you?
At the tournaments, we have them, and I take full advantage of them there. But I did have one where I was living last year. I finally got a PT, but I haven't found one where I'm currently at yet. And I'm pretty healthy, so I travel so much, it's kind of hard for me to sit down and get a good one, because I want someone who's going to know what they're doing. It takes a lot for me to trust someone with my body, because, you know, I got stretched one time at a pickleball tournament, and they like overstretched me and tweaked my knee. So now I don't let anybody stretch me, and I stretch myself because that freaks me out. So I really got to get good recommendations and a referral to somebody. I don't just look on the internet for that. But I did recently find a fitness trainer where I'm at, and he's great. And one thing I will say, if someone's going into collegiate athletics for tennis or whatever it is, the strength training, just be careful. A lot of schools do the heaviest weights and these bars and workouts that are so heavy, and they're just trying to bulk you up. And I think that, like, I mean, it is important to speak up if that's happening. I think that happens in a lot of universities, and it's not good. We had that a little bit, but by, I don't know what year we started getting a better one, but still, like, the stuff I'm doing now is so much better for your body. And honestly, the stuff I'm doing now would have been way more beneficial in college. I'm doing a lot more plyometric and unilateral, bilateral. I could talk all about that stuff, but I think that's something, like, in college that I hope is changing with people, not just like trying to bulk you up as a tennis player. That's unnecessary.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's one area where tennis has improved with fitness, but at the same time, you know, certification is not education. And I think,
Right.
you know, PTs now, for the most part, again, it's just like, well, we think it's just like tennis, but I think it's more tied in with the medical side, where I think tennis is still too much on the guesswork side of it. With Jeff, what's Jeff's last name again? His assistant coach?
Navolo.
Okay, Dennis's brother. Yeah,
Dennis's brother.
so I've met Jeff. I don't know him, but I, you know, was introduced to him, talked to him on the phone about a player. He was at Air Force, I believe.
Yes,
at one time.
He was at Air Force before he went to South Carolina.
But I was told that he's a really funny guy.
Oh, I mean, hopefully they'll tell him I said this, but he's definitely one of the funnier people I've ever met. Like, he's awesome. if you dislike him, I'm going to question that because he's just a great person and he's so funny.
Well, I think there's a lot to be said about humor. Certainly, Rachel has a great name, listeners. The first syllable, Rachel, strong syllable, but Rohrabacher is a great name that you can roar. And everybody has their own sense of humor, but no, I could go through some things on humor with yourself from way back when, but perhaps you didn't think we're so funny. But anyway, like Coco. Coco is your dog. He's such a much better Rocco. I'm sorry, Rocco. Is that he's such a much better athlete, the late Rocco, right? But the
late Rocco.
Humor in the locker room. Humor. I think that's right. Parents, I tell them all the time that your kids got to be good in the classroom. They got to be good in the gym. They got to be good on the track. They got to be good in the locker room. And then obviously they got to be good on the tennis court. But I think a lot of times they're thinking they only have to be good on the tennis court. And, you got to be able to laugh. You got to have a little bit of fun.
I'd say the places where the better tennis players lack most is being good in the locker room.
Say that again, please.
Like the places where tennis players lack most are being good in the locker room.
Yeah. I think for yourself being at HCC, it was a very large, diversified group. You definitely were, I think obviously your parents, they certainly, needed a lot of praise, a lot of pats on the back for making you a tough, competitive cookie. But you certainly, Rohrabacher, over here. You weren't treated like, okay, you're a little kid at a country club. It was
definitely not.
No way was it that way. But no, it's interesting. I think that's one thing about homeschooling. You have to find ways that setting, that community we had it. And again, your mom was there quite often, and there was people like your mom. There was a lot of people that added to the community, and so it wasn't you were just one-on-one with a coach, and there's a lot to be said about group dynamics.
Yeah, absolutely.
So your degree at South Carolina is in? Maybe you said that.
It was in psychology.
Psychology. Vic Braden used to say about psychology. People study psychology to figure themselves out. Is that why you study psychology?
Maybe. We'll never know. But I actually went on to get my master's in social work, but a lot of people do that. I definitely don't want to work in social work. I don't think I would probably go on to get my clinical license and do private practice or work for a sports team or something. I definitely, once I'm done with pickleball, I think I would love to work as a sports mental health counselor. So I will definitely be using that degree.
I spent the last 2 years pretty much at the Battle of Boca almost every weekend. It's a great service that's provided, a standing tournament. And it's amazing how many people are there recruiting. It's not like they're doing the type of work we did at HCC where you're just pounding out, working on basics and fundamentals. We call those people handing out business cards third base coaches. They want to coach somebody. They want to coach somebody who's already played, or that is a very good player. They're on third base. They're about to round and go towards home. And I've always say that tennis needs more first base coaches. But with those business cards being handed out, there's all sorts of people that are recruiting to be the mental coach. When you were at South Carolina, did you have a mental coach? Did the staff, did the head coach, Coach Epley, have a mental coach that you could work with?
So to be completely honest, I think we had a social worker working there, but I did not utilize her. I think by my last year, we had a sports psychologist there. But again, I didn't use her. Not to say I didn't need her. Like I think that they are sometimes very necessary, but I just didn't at that moment in my life. When by my senior year, I thought everything was going really well for my game. I had a great relationship with all the girls on my team and with my coaches, and I just it wasn't needed in that moment. So I did not utilize her. But I think there are many teams and individuals that could benefit in certain points in their careers or lives from a sports psychologist or mental health counselor. So.
Andy Fitzell, he's our podcast founder, my podcast coach. I think quickly, I would say Nicole Erickson, Jim Lair, and Joey Johnson are three people who've had as guests on the mental side. And one thing that Joey comes to my mind is we've coached his son, Spencer, forever. We're still working with him. We're still doing video work and such. He's a freshman at UCLA after going on a 2-year mission. But he hits the ball well, and people are actually surprised that he was on a 2-year mission and he comes back and he hits the ball well. Well, that's a sign of efficient strokes. If someone's injured, when you come back from an injury, the stroke that comes back to you the fastest is the one where you're the most efficient. But my point with Joey is I think the mental toughness coaches, I mean, they play a key role. But Vic Braden, if you have no forehand, you're not going to be mentally tough. Jim Lair, you have to have strokes that hold up under pressure. But you certainly would have the background to do both. Coming back to tennis and pickleball, the term bridge sport. I know in Florida, for the most part, they're not playing pickleball on clay. Is that accurate? All over the country? And that's because of the bounce of the ball?
I think the bounce of the ball, also it would add a weird, like, what is the clay? There's holes in the wiffle ball. So it's like kind of the dynamic of like what would having the clay in the ball mean? Like, what would that change? Would it change, like, if it gets stuck inside, would it make it heavier? Would it, we don't really know what it would do. So there's like a lot of little things like that.
Steve Campbell, who I work with here at the Wintergreen Resort, there's 4 courts at the bottom of the mountain. And we're never at the bottom of the mountain. At the top of the mountain, there's 12 clay courts, 8 pickleball courts, and 3 indoor hard courts. And we're very spoiled that we pretty much have the run of the place because there's not much activity here. It's a resort with one country store. People come here to ski. But what he's done is taken the clay off a clay court and just experimenting to see if people could play pickleball on a clay court without clay. But there's a sport called spec tennis. Have you heard of that?
I don't think so.
And I don't know why they called it spec tennis, because it's basically a spin-off of paddle tennis that FDR, he thought tennis courts at public parks took too much space. So instead of being 78 feet, they would be 42 feet, service line to service line. And you'd play with a wooden mallet, a punctured tennis ball. And they were courts built, I believe it was, definitely it was in the New York area, New York City, St. Louis. I have to double check on that, but definitely Venice Beach out in California. Those sorts still exist. And Bobby Riggs, Pancho Gonzalez, and I'm drawing a blank here. I should never draw a blank. It's actually in my notes. Althea Gibson. How could I ever forget Althea Gibson? And they started playing that. It just, but if we did a video for Spec Tennis, and I believe they're playing with the orange ball. Might be the green dot ball, but the orange ball.
Oh, okay.
And the term bridge is that I think there should be something done where tennis and pickleball, they really need to work together. Now, the governing bodies of tennis, the USPTA and the PTR, like overnight, it seems like overnight they became not only tennis associations, but pickleball associations. And it just seems that there needs to be, someone needs to be waving the flag. And I think the sport should be presented as one. As I said earlier, if you learn tennis, you'll be able to play pickleball. It shouldn't be like they're totally different, like they're enemies of one another. With rackets, I mean, is there a big difference between one racket and the next playing pickleball?
For the paddles?
Well, yeah, for you. Yeah, I should say paddles. Yeah, not rackets.
Yes. Yeah. There's like the thicker, it goes like, I play with the 16 millimeter. I don't think there might be an 18 or 20, but that would be a little too fat. So the thicker of a millimeter you go, the more control you have, the softer the paddle you have. The thinner the millimeter, so if it's like 11, that's a super thin paddle, and the ball, it's like more powerful because it's not sitting on the paddle as long. So that to me is other. Haven't really understood the differences. Maybe it's because I don't know them, but the differences in the type of materials that's made. There's like raw carbon fiber paddles and fiber flex and a couple other ones. And those materials make a difference as well. And there's also like surface. So some surfaces are grittier with like small little hairline divots in them. That make it, those are like kind of the strings, if you will, of a pickleball paddle. And that makes it grittier to allow you to produce a little bit more spin than a smooth paddle face would. But other than that, those are really the most important concepts to understand.
What about the size of the grip? I mean, especially not only are you an Eastern, a continental, semi-Western, but also the size. It's no problem to have a two-handed backhand?
Yeah, so they have started making grips that are longer. I think mine's 5.5 inches maybe. And that does make it more roomy for having two hands on the paddle. I actually put my index finger up onto the face of the paddle because it's just comfortable there. That's how I've always done it. I was never told to do that. I don't think there's a right or wrong way to hold in that sense, like finger up or down with the left hand. I don't think that really matters. But if you don't do that, I think you would have to have a longer grip like mine. But they do make like 4-inch grips, and they are definitely smaller, maybe less than 4-inch grips to give you more paddle face, but it's way less grip. But a lot of the men only have one hand on the paddle. Some women even do as well. I'd say most professional women now do two hands. But yeah, so there are different also grip sizes, like smaller or bigger, like in tennis, like width wise. So,
Rachel, your entry into pickleball, let me guess. So you finish your undergraduate degree, you're going to make some money before you go to graduate school, and you start to work, and then you're coaching both. Is that pretty much how you got started?
Yeah, I was coaching tennis, and Damon taught me pickleball and said, "I think you'd be really good at this. I also think you should coach it." Then COVID hit, so I was playing a few tournaments in the beginning of 2020, and then I stopped playing because I think I was just a little burnout from tennis. I just graduated after playing again for 3/4 of my life, so I was just burnt out from playing the sport and working out a sport. I just needed a little bit of a break, and I stopped playing. I think I might have played one tournament because it was local in Tampa in 2021, just because someone asked me, and I was like, whatever, it's like 10 minutes from where I live. But after that, I didn't play again. I started teaching in 2022 when I moved up to the Midwest, and I needed to make money to help pay for my master's. So I was like, I'll just teach this. It's easy to teach, and let's see if I can get some clients, which, it took off for me. I got so many private clients, and a lot of people had their own courts, which was very convenient for me. So I started teaching, and by the end of 2022, I had a lot of people that I was playing with. I had 2 pro girls here, top 10 pros that lived in Indianapolis, where I was living, that were like, you should try to go pro. Like, you're practicing this, you're doing really well. They were very supportive of me. So when April hit of 2023, which is last year, I'm getting confused on what year we're in, but that was my first professional tournament, and so many people just told me I should go for it. And there were people I trusted, and some senior pros in the game who have seen pickleball for a while. They said I would be great. So I started playing professional tournaments while I was working a practicum within my master's, making no money, doing my master's and teaching pickleball to pay for all of it. It was a very stressful time, but it ended up working out pretty well. And yeah, so I committed to playing tournaments. I really picked up in August. So from August to December last year was the most tournaments I had played, and I did really well. So now we're a full-time pickleball player.
So, in listening to this podcast, Rachel Rohrabacher, the draft, tell us about. Um, People were very surprised that you were like a high draft pick, or that you were a draft pick, and then you ended up being on this world championship team. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so in July was when that happened. By that time, I had maybe played 3 or 4, maybe 3 tournaments at a high level. Oh, it was 4. I played 4 high level tournaments before that draft, and I did pretty increasingly well in each of them. I had a top 10 win in 2 of them, I believe, and then by the last one, I had beaten somebody who was on that cusp of the. It's called Premier and Challenger. Premier is the top 1 through 24 women and men, and then the Challenger is the top 25 through 48 women and men. So that's kind of where people go. And I had beaten someone on the cusp of that, like who would be a last pick of Premier and first of Challenger. And I also knew the girl who picked me from junior tennis. Her name's Anna Bright. And she knew me as a competitor. She knew the SEC. She played my team when she went to Berkeley. So she remembered me and saw me have those good wins. So she took a chance and picked me. And I would say most of the people were very upset that that happened. On social media, not kind things were said about me being picked, and it was upsetting to a lot of people. So Anna took a huge chance on picking me because of it was kind of like a very big thing in pickleball for me to get picked. And we ended up winning the first event we played as a team. And I think I was like the number 1 girl or something record or whatever, or maybe tied with Anna or something during the event. So it ended up going really well. And we ended up making the finals of the last 2 events. It was only a total of 3. And we made the finals of every one and won one. So it was definitely a great thing for me to do so well, because it was so frowned upon, I think, to pick me. And now she's my partner for this year in regular tournaments.
So is it contract? I mean, it's the Orlando Squeeze. Are you with that team again?
No, so I'm not going to get too much into it because it can get very confusing. But the team I'm on is a league called the MLP, and the individual tournaments is a league called the PPA. And they are trying to like find their footing on what's the best way to do it. But basically, we're waiting for the draft to happen again this year. Technically, I could be on the Squeeze again, and they definitely want me. I've been talking to the owners and the staff, and they're going to try to get me. But if somebody pays to get me first, there's nothing I have no control in where I get picked. Unfortunately.
Oh, it's interesting. Singles, doubles, mixed. How's that go?
So I play women's doubles and mixed doubles. I don't play singles because they don't pay very well for singles. There's no benefit to me playing singles, and it increases injury risk. So I just don't play singles. I don't enjoy it as much. I'm actually pretty good. I went 3 sets with the number 2 woman in the world or whatever. I don't know really the ranking system, but she's number 2 back in September, and I got bronze in that tournament. And I'm pretty good at it, but I just don't enjoy it that much, and I am scared I'm going to get injured from it.
Rachel, with your schedule, so your schedule, is it a mix between what you do as a team member with your team in league play, and then there's also independent tournaments?
Yeah, so how it was last year, there were 3 events. I'm going to go based off of when I started, I guess, in July. There were only 3 team events, and everything else was individual. Now, this upcoming year, again, they're trying to find their footing on what's best. They changed it up. So now we're going to be in regions competing against each other, and there's going to be a lot more events regionally. I think I'll play 8 maybe events, but then 3 big ones that are like the normal MLPs, they're called. So I'll be playing a lot more team events this year, in addition to a lot of individual tournaments as well.
So someone like, there's a celebrity match. I think Sharapova and, well, first of all, Graf and Agassi, husband, wife, are going to be playing against Sharapova and McEnroe, I think. But say someone like Jeannie Bouchard, she hasn't played in the league necessarily, right? She just plays in independent tournaments or showcases.
Yeah, I don't know if she'll want to play. I don't know if she'll sign up. I don't know contractually if she has to. I have no idea. I did not speak to her, so I don't want to speak on her behalf. But I know she is playing. She's also signed up for the next individual tournament on February 1st. So I'll see her there again. So she'll be playing that. I don't know. Again, I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's obviously individual by individual, case study. But is there a way to climb the ladder like there is in tennis, where you can play, the 25Ks, a future entry level tournament, and you move up to challenger?
So honestly, that is where it totally differentiates. Like technically, you could sign up for men's pro. Like, would you get it? You get in qualifying, and then you'd have to get through qualifying. But like, there's not like there are more tournaments that are worth more points, but like they're all pro. Like if you're in the pro division, it's not like that. This sport is very different to tennis in the sense where you are quite literally only as good as your partner. You can truly isolate someone in this sport. So it is challenging to get good quickly because you don't get as good as a partner. If you're very good, no one's going to hit to you. But the word does get around like, oh, this girl's good. She just might not have a good partner. And then maybe as you get better, you'll get better and better partners. And you have to climb. Basically, the only way to climb in this sport is to get results. I think I'm on the more luckier side of having Anna Bright's the number 3 girl. So she knew me from junior tennis. She knew me as a collegiate athlete. She saw some results I had. But luckily I got in the, premier very quickly. I didn't even play challenger, and I don't think anybody's done that. So it does usually take longer. I think I've just gotten fortunate and taken advantage of those events and proved myself. But
along those lines, 2024, it's January. How many weeks will you play? Do you have an idea? Is there a set schedule for 12 months?
Yeah, I'll probably be playing 25 weeks out of the year.
So sometimes you travel with your team, sometimes you travel individually.
Yeah.
And you have a coach. When you were with the Orlando Squeeze, obviously there's coaches perhaps, right?
It depends on if your team wants one. Since it is so new, it's not like we have the Steve Smiths of the world where you have been in this sport for decades and you're very knowledgeable, and it's this established sport where there is a right and wrong way, and you know the strategy just by like instantly watching a match. I would prefer suggest if I got put on the Orlando Squeeze again, I'd love to have Damon be the coach, and they're more of like someone on the outside looking in to tell you what's happening and be there for you. Pickleball happens so quickly, especially in the team setting. So it's hard as a player to realize the changes you need to make. You have to be very fast acting. You don't have 2 hours like in a tennis match. It's sometimes 20 minutes. So
with when you were a junior, we used to use the old volleyball scoring. If you remember, you could only win a point when you were serving. So you're playing doubles, and you lose your serve, then the other team serves, and it just lets people know the importance of serving. That's how pickleball works, right? You can only win if you're serving.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's a dream tiebreaker?
So in Major League Pickleball, which is the team event, if you guys are tied after both gender doubles and both mixed doubles, so it would be 2-2 overall scoring, you play a dream breaker, which is where each person plays 4 points of singles, and then the other person your other teammate goes in. So it's I'll play 4 points against somebody, then Anna would go in and play 4 points against somebody, then Andre, and then Zane. So you would just keep rotating until 21.
So Let's get into the money side. We don't want to be personal, but I remember you signing that contract. Your father was all for it, where I get 22.2% of your lifetime earnings. But no, seriously, you have an agent that's helping you with, like apparel and rackets and shoes and all that. Because
Yeah,
it seems like the sport's booming, right?
yeah, it's definitely booming. I have an agent now, which is kind of crazy, and I have to hire some people to help with social media to just keep growing my brand. Even though I hate social media and I hate self promotion, but it's something I have to do. Um, but yeah, the prize money is getting better, and for certain events, it's really great. You can definitely make a living off of it, and I'm enjoying what I'm doing. So, kind of crazy to think I can make money playing pickleball, but
No, it's
here we
great.
are.
No, I mean, you're explosive and the way you play. I mean, your tennis game, as I said earlier, going forward, being aggressive. When you were a young kid, yeah, you loved to play with the boys, older boys, and you had no problem where I said, okay, the team that gets the most pegs wins. And you had a smile on your face, and you, as a young kid, you loved that. Tell me a little about, or tell us a little bit about the rating. How's that work, or ranking?
Yeah. So how it works is a beginner is 2.5. So it goes up from there. So beginner will be 2.5 to 3.0. Intermediate would be 3.5 to 4.0. It would be kind of like that 4.25, like 4.5. 5.0 is pretty good, but not quite pro. And then above, so like I'm technically a 5.7 or 5.8 or something, and I'm a top 20, top 15 pro. I think a lot of the men are a little, like the pro men are a little higher, so they're like closer. They're in the sixes. But I think they go with like they have like, it's called Duper, but I think they do like that same type of like rating system. That's what they use.
So, I mean, a typical day for you now is you don't have the academic work that you had in undergraduate or graduate school, but you're still getting up every day. Now you're trying to get better at pickleball, correct? You're going to the gym and doing this and doing
Yeah,
that.
yeah, again, I just hired someone local who is really great. So I see him about twice a week. His wife teaches Pilates in the gym, like private Pilates. So I'm going to be incorporating that fitness training with some Pilates training. And so I'll be working out about 3 times a week at a gym. And I practice about every day. I'll be doing like gassers and very hard drilling things in the beginning of the week, and more play stuff by the weekend if I don't have a tournament. If I do, it's just kind of crunched a little bit in the week because we leave Thursday. Yeah, that's like, and I try to prioritize stretching a lot, foam rolling, and when I get to be home, I like to just make my own meals so I can just be conscious of what I'm putting in my body. And yeah,
Do you hit tennis balls
it's a
anymore,
nice
or no time? No
lifestyle.
time for tennis.
I have actually gotten a little bit of an itch to like try, and recently I hit for 30 seconds, and then I just like got off the court because I really wanted to play, but no one would play with me. So I mean, I'm
Yeah,
just an
I'm sure
old,
you.
washed up old person.
I'm
No
sure
one
you.
wants to play with me anymore.
No, no, you're 26 years old. I'm sure that um, you'd have to experiment whether it would be good to play both. Maybe if you throw your timing off, perhaps it'd be interesting though if you played some tennis and some pickleball. If you felt like it threw your game off a little bit, that's where I know club players are still some people. I think it's a small percentage is they're still playing both. I think it would be interesting to find out. I mean, I don't think at the recreational level. In all fairness to pickleball players, at the recreational level, you know, 3-0 tennis is 3-0 tennis. It's not a very high level of play. Um,
Right.
I, Eastern Hills Tennis Club, Brian Clark, great guy. I know his daughter Sarah is a very good tennis player. Are you, in saying that you could hit some balls with Sarah, but if you just are you pressed to find people to play with? Is that a problem? to practice with?
For pickleball?
Yeah, because there's not that many good players, or
Yeah. So where I'm at in Cincinnati, I have the good news is you have a slew wherever you are. I feel like of good 5-0 guys. So they're perfect to drill with because they can handle my dinks and not miss too much, especially if I get them focused and intense. But it is challenging to find women. It is, especially at my level. I mean, there's just no women to really practice with. I have to drive back to Indianapolis actually to train with the twins that are top 10, so I can get some match play against the high level. So the match play is where I struggle finding here. But the drilling and practicing, it's perfect. I have one pro here, a male pro. But other than that, there's not many people. When I go back to Tampa, Florida, there's a couple more pros, but again, there's just no women in the Tampa St. Pete area. There's a lot of women in the Naples and Boca area, but just wherever, it's so hard to find them.
Well, that's the same in tennis, though, is that a lot of the women, they move up the ladder and their sparring partner, they hire men. I mean, it's pretty much straight across the board.
Yeah.
With going back to the competitive spirit, the psychology, do you remember, did we go through the Myers-Briggs personality test? You must have heard that language
We
through
did.
us.
Yes, we did.
Was that part of your undergraduate or master's? Did they have Myers-Briggs? Did they cover that at all?
I want to say my master's covered it. My undergrad didn't, but my master's covered it a little bit, but we weren't required to. Actually, in my practicum in my master's, they wanted us to take the test so they knew more about us as an employee or intern, whatever it was called. But yeah, it's interesting how they used it, and they also used another personality test as well.
For our listeners, Joel Trucker's article that made it all the way to the cover of Tennis Magazine is now on our GreatBase Tennis website. And no, I was just wondering with hockey, I think no, but basketball, football, baseball, yes, is that they've used personality when it comes down to choosing, who they're gonna draft. It's pretty interesting, and who's going to get along with who, and yeah, it's a great tool. It's not scientifically validated. It doesn't put anybody in a box, but it's a great tool to understand yourself better, and then who's going to play doubles with one another, and
oh yeah, I that's what I was kind of alluding to earlier with Kevin's culture and recruitment. I think the Orlando Squeeze, another reason why they picked me is a little bit of personality and energy and passion. They went off the character I was, and they were creating a team, and everybody looked at our team like it was this like rare gem that someone actually recently told me that will never happen again. Like the energy and the people on your team were just so amazing. Like it was perfectly drafted. And I'm like, well, why won't that happen again? Like, because I don't think a lot of people have learned that that's what makes a good team. It's not the first and second and 10th best player. It's like, obviously you have to be good, but you have to mesh well, right, as a team. So I think, all the calls I've had with team owners before the new draft this year is that one thing that matters to me are the individuals on my team as people. So I don't want, a cancer on the team, especially because we're so small, and it's only 4 people on the team, right? We better get along and have the same ideology of how we compete.
No, it's well put. What with pro level sports? So if you're based in Cincinnati, and are the matches home and away, or are they at designated sites? I'm going to guess they're designated sites. Is that right?
Yeah, they are designated sites for now. I think that's a direction that a lot of people see the team, or that want the team thing to get to, which I think would be super cool. I mean, look at the most successful sports, basketball and football, in baseball. I mean, that's all on the home and away and the rivalries and the loving someone on your team. Like, I mean, I'm not going to say myself, but let's say Anna, for instance, who was on the squeeze. A lot of people identify Anna Bright as someone on the squeeze. So they want, it's like, if she's not on the squeeze this year, that's kind of frustrating because pickleball is trying to build. They're trying to build a fan base. They're trying to build that. And I think a lot of, like, we especially had that. And now if at least she's not on the team, it's just like starting all over. And it's kind of like that emotional attachment that gets people to want to support and watch.
Oh, for sure. When I was a kid, I grew up 85 miles. I'm an American, but I grew up 85 miles south of Montreal, and there wasn't free agency. So the team, players would play their entire career for the most part. Every once in a while, there'd be trades, but you wouldn't get to the point where, okay, this is my free agency year, and now I'm open for bid. If you were playing for the Montreal Canadiens, it was like you had a 15, 20-year career, and then, the fans really became so tight. They're really bonded through that. I'm sure that's something that pickleball would want to work out, where there's familiarity, where it's even like a tennis for tots class. At that age group, it's very important to try to have the same instructor with really young kids.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tell us about your boyfriend. He's another athlete in the mix that must be helping you with your mindset.
Yeah, he plays for SC Cincinnati. He's a professional soccer goalkeeper. And when I moved in with him up in the Midwest, we lived in Indianapolis. He played for the USL team, and then recently retired to be a goalkeeper coach for the academy. SC Cincinnati heard that, and they wanted him to work over here. So that's why we're back in Cincinnati. And he's been working as a goalkeeper coach for the academy, and also helps out with the first and second team, which is super cool. And it's just so nice to have him because he's so understanding of not only the schedule, but like he knows me very well as a person, but also him playing sports, knows how to handle like wins and losses for me and how to be there for me. And he loves pickleball. Like, he loves supporting and watching, and he's just definitely one of my biggest fans. So I'm super appreciative of him. And when I told him this is what I wanted to do, he didn't look at me like a crazy person. He was like, I think you're going to be great. Like, he knows better than anyone, I'm probably one of the more competitive people in the world. So if I put my mind to something, I'll be good at it.
That's great.
Within reason. But yeah, he's great.
With a goalie, growing up playing ice hockey, my mother used to say the toughest job in sports is to be the parent of a goalie. Like, say hockey, the same as soccer. I know so little about soccer, but if you're playing hockey and if the forwards make a mistake, the defenseman can make up for it. If the defenseman makes a mistake, the goalie can make up for it. But if the goalie makes a mistake, no chance. There's nobody to make up for the mistake. And I just think, when you think about psychology and the mindset of an athlete. I grew up, 3 kids for sure. Seth Barnum, Mark Hamlin, and Stevie Pelusio. And Seth, he went off to prep school at a really young age. I'm still in contact with all 3 of them. And goalies the pressure's on the parent perhaps, but also the goalie. With hockey, we would use the term sieve. They're like a spaghetti drainer, and everything just goes right through them, a strainer. And then in hockey, if the other team scores, the red light goes on. And we'd always say, the red light goes on so much that our goalie's he's got a sunburn on the back of his neck, or couldn't
that's funny.
Couldn't stop a beach ball. But no, I think with parents listening, obviously doesn't always work out that way. But if you have 2 athletes bringing up an athlete, all you have to do is look at the backstories of people that are successful. So if parents have not been athletes, they have to, really be open to learning and go, okay, what's this all about? But that's interesting that your boyfriend, he's a coach as well, right? He's a current player or former player?
No, former player. So he retired and now he's coaching goalkeepers. But it's funny you say that. His parents warned me because we dated while he was playing professionally, like in the MLS and USL. And I was so nervous watching his games, like, because of, like you said, like the goalkeeper, it's the worst feeling ever because every goal looks like his fault. And other people, other players on the field can make mistakes, and get away with it, but he can't, obviously, because it's a goal. So it's very stressful. And it's funny though, because he like says he gets stressed when I play, but I'm like, I literally touch the ball a million times. Like it's not the same. So it's definitely crazy.
When I was a kid, my parents, they moved 150 miles south, and I was just about to turn 10, so I was pretty young, and I was telling my dad, we're moving the wrong way. I said, let's move to Canada. And hockey was not that strong in the area I moved to. Later, I went, I was only did that for a few years. Then I went off to a boarding school. They're still top 10 among boarding schools in hockey. But I remember wanting to be a goalie and asking my father, and I was already scoring goals. And I said, I want to be a goalie. But in this small town I grew up in, it produced very good goalies because the story was that we couldn't get the puck out of our own end. It was there's a couple of really pushy parents, and instead of playing for you would play house league. It was so simple. You play house league, and if you were good enough, there was like the Syracuse Pee Wee All Stars, and but we just had a very aggressive parent that pushed it. Pretty soon, our small town of 2,000 people, we were going off to play Buffalo. We were going off to play team like the Rochester All Stars, but we were just outmatched, and the program wasn't strong enough to have its own travel team at that time. But yeah, goalies, the expression would be they saw a lot of rubber. But it seems to me goalies, they're so athletic, the soccer goalies, with what they're asked to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have this down in my notes. In my research, Rachel Rohrabacher quote, Rachel Rohrabacher, rest and relaxation. I used to yell that out. Rohrabacher, over here. I'd rather play my way and lose than play all uptight, intense, and win. That's a Rohrabacher quote. Why don't you talk about that a little bit?
That is so wise. Yeah, I think I learned that in college tennis. There are lots of moments where you have a lot of pressure on you and you can freeze up. And especially with my game, I feel like when I was young, it was either an unforced error or a winner. I wasn't somebody to want someone to hit a winner on me. I like things on my terms. Maybe it's a control factor. Who knows? But I just know, like, if I'm going to miss anyway, I would rather do it on my own terms. So I think that helps me in those big moments and high pressure moments of like just trying to stay true to myself and my game, because I'd rather do that and make it look like that. And I also hate the commentator, the feeling of like people watching it and being like, oh, she's tight, she's nervous. I don't like that look. I don't like it on other people. I certainly don't want it on myself. So I just try to avoid that altogether.
You're definitely, from the get-go, I would say, would be the one ball blast versus the forever push. I don't think you were ever called a pusher. Now, for our listeners, when Rachel was very young, the pressure, certainly from me and the student assistants and the fellow coaches that were helping, the pressure was on get it organized, get the ready position, put that racket at the center of that racket, put it in the neutral position. But the pressure was on skill acquisition. And I think that's where people in the early years, there's too much pressure on winning. But I tell juniors and their parents that junior tennis, for the most part, I don't think it really prepares people for college tennis like it should. A lot of parents and players, they haven't even seen a college tennis match. And, you play at the level where you go to your campus or another campus, and it looks like an Olympic village. You talk a little about the SEC conference. But with that, the pressure, like say 3-all matches. Junior tennis doesn't really prepare someone for a 3-all match. Could you comment on that?
Of the pressure of a 3-all match?
Yeah, so
in the SEC?
you're NCAA, a dual match, an NCAA tournament's even more so. Like, if you win, your team moves on. If you lose, that's in the tournament. But I just, juniors, they get so nervous over. There's so much anxiety, and it's okay. Just imagine.
Oh yeah.
Just imagine you're playing for your team. I mean, how many 3-all matches do you remember playing? You must have played a handful.
Many. I wasn't many times the person who was the last match on, but even watching, that's something also too. I would much rather be on the court at 3-all than watching at 3-all. Like, watching is just so hard. Again, am I a control freak? Maybe, but I think that it's so hard, right? Because I can look back at everything as a 26-year-old, and I feel like I'm much more wise than I was when I was 16, and I've also lived through it. It's hard, right? Because as a junior, you just only play for yourself, and it's all you know, and you're emotional, and you think everything's so much high pressure, and you have to get to college, and whatever parental, coach, whatever pressures there are at that age, right? It's totally different. But I mean, just looking now, if only right, in that moment, this is nothing compared to what you will experience in, whatever school you're going to play at, right? Because not only now at a real moment, you want it for yourself. I hope you want it for your team, or else you're on the wrong team, or maybe you're not a good team player. You want it for your team. You want it for your coach. You're also playing to stay in the lineup. Like, I'm not going to say every match determines that, but it really does. Like, your performance, or at least for my coach, your attitude and the way you handle pressure, that was really determined you being in the lineup. Maybe wins and losses here and there, but so you have that pressure as well, which is like, honestly, I'd say more than anything, the team and the pressure of being in the lineup or not is tenfold what you experience as a junior tennis player. Like, you're just out there for yourself, really. Like, again, you might have some parental and coach pressures, but and everyone's lives are different. I know some Eastern European parents harder on their junior tennis kids than American parents, but still, it's a lot. But the SEC or college tennis, that threat of being in or out of the lineup, it does sneak in your mind when you're out there.
Going back to the SEC in South Carolina, how was your team? Mostly Americans, a mix, half and half. What was your team as far as Americans to foreigners?
I think it was a mix. We had definitely more Americans. The bulk of my career there, my time there, we had a Brazilian who's actually top 50 or 30 in WTA now, doubles. She's doing amazing. Shout out Ingrid Gamara Martin. She's from Brazil.
What's her name again? What's her name?
Ingrid. Her name's Ingrid Gamara Martin.
Okay.
She plays with Luisa Stefani and Bia and some other people in doubles. She recently beat Coco Gauff in doubles, but anyway, she is from Brazil. I had a girl younger than me from Italy. We had a girl that my doubles partner was from England, and we had one other Italian at one point, but she transferred, and we had a Croatian, but she transferred because she just wasn't a good fit. But other than that, I'd say it was mostly American the whole time.
And how about the other teams throughout the SEC?
Depended on who it was. I think obviously the better teams, right? Like your Floridas, your Georgias, your Vanderbilt, they were, at the time when I was being recruited, they were the better teams. So they get those blue chips in America and the higher level U.S. kids. But the ones that weren't as good went foreign. So they could get better kids from over there that wanted to come to America.
I like what you said about the locker room. I'm always telling kids, you got to just, I saw some kids got blue eyes, or say they have brown eyes, either or. I go, you kids with brown eyes, you have beautiful blue eyes, and they say something. I go, you blew it. Don't say.
Yes, I remember that.
You remember that? You have such people. Don't say anything. Just ignore it. But I have to get this out. Stephen Goldman, who was taught by Chris Carey, but he ended up spending quite a bit of time with us, and he was a very good player. He played college tennis, and I could listeners, I could remember this, and you were very authentic. You got along with everybody. You treated everybody the same. And I'd go, Rohrabacher, will you quit asking to be with Stephen Goldman? And you're just you got to the point where you would just totally ignore it. And but I do that all day long, and people they'll get so nervous, they're so insecure, but I think that jockocracy from the locker room. I grew up in ice hockey, and you platoon because you're only out there for 45 seconds. You come back, you look straight ahead, and the coaches, laced with profanity, they just tell you the mistakes you make, and it's like you go right back out, and you get, you get used to the chirping, you get used to, again.
You don't even hear it anymore.
Yeah.
I don't even hear it anymore.
Yeah.
Really. If I do, it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah. And I know Connor was much older than you, but he certainly treated you like a sibling. I mean, he gave you a hard time.
For sure. He threw me in garbage cans.
And that's where, both your parents would realize like that's a good thing, instead of like, I'd have parents, well, that type of thing happens. We're going to interview Clayton Stanley. He's our original guinea pig from our tennis tech program where you get a college degree. And I sent him a text. I said, "You're going to be 50, Stanley." And I said, "If I live long enough, I'm going to get you on our podcast on your birthday." And I think parents have to understand that there's a craziness to it. I mean, it's just, that locker room humor. It's just not all straight laced and march in a straight line. I mean, you got to have give and take. And and I think also too, in the coaches, I remember being told when I was a kid, Smith, you're so slow, you got to speed up to stop. And, that doesn't, I don't think that happens, especially in tennis with I apologize. I didn't get Rocco's name right, but I just remember best athlete in the family. If you could run like if you could run like your dog. I mean, he was part Greyhound, right? I mean, that guy, Whip It. I mean, he could just motor that guy. Anyway, here's a mind vitamin for you. If you don't use your mind, use your mind, or it will use you. I heard Tony Robbins say that. He's got that line. I should have done this, and I should have done that, and I should have done this. And in the end, I should all over myself. But yeah, your mind will definitely work against you. And you're going to win or you're going to lose. So I like what you said about just hitting out, going down, swinging.
Yeah.
But in watching you play tennis, I can just see it. It's just like looking back at it, the developmental time where, and you're rewarded by being aggressive.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. With if you were the commissioner of pickleball, it's obviously, I guess, in its infancy, just starting out. I guess we could just end with this. But what would you do to try to bridge that gap between tennis and pickleball? And tennis people are all upset. They go, "Okay, pickleball is invading tennis," and and we do have problems in tennis. I mean, I think it's because it's been a money grab. And for someone to play pickleball, it's not that expensive, correct? To get started in the game.
Right. It's not that expensive at all because you don't have to pay for stringing. Shoes, I guess, is the same. And you don't need a fancy bag. Your paddles fit in a backpack. A lot of people don't play with grips. The stringing is a huge part of it, right? The maintenance of that. So you really only need one paddle a year, and paddles cost anywhere from $120 to, the more expensive ones are $300, but that's still less. That's as much as a tennis racket minus any stringing. So, I think that's, and then I don't know if there's any monetary difference on renting a court. Maybe it's less for a pickleball court because 2 pickleball courts make up 1 tennis court. So I'm not sure, but I think it is definitely cheaper. I think the balls are a little more expensive, but other than that,
tennis balls or pickleballs?
For sure. So I think pickleballs are more expensive than tennis balls.
But pickleballs, do they last forever? I mean, at your level, you break the balls, right?
Yeah, it depends on the ball. I think a beginner could make a ball last a little longer, but tennis balls are just cheaper per unit. And I think you can get away. I mean, obviously you want new tennis balls if you're playing a practice match, but it's the same for a pickleball. So I'd say pickleballs are just a little bit more expensive. I think for one pickleball, it's about a more expensive one is like $4.55, and that's how much you can get a can of tennis balls for.
Yeah, I've observed some pickleball functions and in clinics. It seems to me that some of the drills are the same around the world, or 2-on-1s,
Yeah.
and but I just think from a to help tennis needs education, education, education. Perhaps that's the same thing for everything.
So does pickleball. I mean, you have some people get, again, certification is not an education. You have people saying they're whatever it is. I'm not certified, but whatever it is, I'm PP whatever certified to teach pickleball, and they're like a 3-5 intermediate player teaching people how to do stuff. And it's because the knowledge just isn't there for a lot of beginners, intermediate players. So I mean, it's the same for tennis, right? Anybody can go get certified and say they know how to teach and not.
No, again, I think strongly that people that teach, like myself, people who teach tennis, I'm telling the tennis players, go play pickleball, sign up. It's movement. It's how's it go? It's your mind, your mobility, and your mechanics. And it's you could, as we talked about, perhaps it could throw your timing off, but local tournaments, can't beat them, join them, get out and play. But I just don't see it where it differs that much. I'm sure, like
Yeah.
Sam Query said, 90%. I'm sure there's differences, but if you can play one, Braden used to say all the time, because people would complain about the lines that went down on a tennis court when they first came up, the USTA and even the ITF, the governing body of tennis internationally, that okay, we're going to have 10 under tennis, and there's going to be a 60-foot court. So if you have a green surface, you're going to have light green lines. It's going to be, blended in is the word. But you go to a gymnasium and there's all these lines. There's badminton, there's volleyball, there's basketball, there's all these lines. And what Braden would say is that if you're a basketball player, you know where your line is. And I think it's true in tennis.
Right.
I think it's true in tennis. So actually, the pickleball lines can be a teaching aid for a tennis pro. But again,
Mm-hmm.
I think that I watch young kids come in and take a lesson for pickleball, and they can play instantly. And I still think that's the wrong way to do it. Even though they can play instantly, again, to me, it looks like they're just swinging a fly swatter instead of, okay, just, learn this the right way. And then you'll enjoy it more because you'll get more balls in play, and therefore you get more exercise. And if you do have the competitive spirit, the way the brain's programmed, no matter what skill, no matter what sport it is, it takes the brain about 10 minutes to be programmed. So if someone's programmed to do something inefficiently on a pickleball court and they do it for quite some time, it's just like tennis. It would have been much more difficult for you. You mentioned that, or we both talked about it and made that video for you years ago when you're 8. If we had to try to do that when you were 15, Joel Trucker said on our podcast, if a 15-year-old's told to go to the net for the first time, it's like they're learning a third language because they've never been forward.
Yeah, for sure. But to answer your question before I have to hop off soon, but to answer your question, I just think like the hostility between tennis and pickleball is just like, I feel like it's just people like wanting to be upset about something. As somebody who played tennis and who can kind of sympathize sometimes for what the tennis players are upset about, I think it's just like, just give it a chance. Like same thing for pickleball, just like have respect for each other. Like you said, the lines on the court, like, I mean, if you're really that upset about it, go pay for a country club and get on a clay court. Like if you're that serious about tennis and you're upset about the lines on a court,
no, that's a good
but it's
point.
just like worth a shot. And if you don't like, if you really tried it and you just don't like it, like that's your opinion and that's great, but you don't have to like be so hostile. Like other people like it, and I'm the same way. Like I have nothing but respect for tennis players. I would never force somebody to try pickleball. I think and if one of my friends asked me to play tennis and it wasn't around a tournament, I totally would. Like, it's not like oh, I'm pickleball now. It's not like
Right.
against each other. So I think the hostility is just so unnecessary. And I think that like maybe some experienced tennis successful people who have built tennis, like, I don't know. I think pickleball, because of the hostility, are trying so hard to not be like tennis. So, and a lot of people feel that hostility and don't want to be like tennis, but I think that they're an established like thing. I don't know what's right, but like, I think that like it's causing the future of pickleball maybe to just like not even want to be developed like it, or I don't know. It's just a weird talking point, but I think it's a very valid question that needs to be asked and talked about.
No,
But
I think that's a great
yeah,
point to end on. Hostility is a great word for it. And I think of skiers and snowboarders, they've worked it out. And I think that's what
yeah,
tennis people and pickleball people need to do. My comment would be, and we'll follow up and put a few things on our Facebook post, how you play pickleball. You can see the tennis, you can see the fundamentals,
yeah,
and then people like yourself who spent so many years with it, you can just see it. And it should be in any sport, fundamental skill acquisition. But
yeah.
Rohrabacher, love yelling that name. There's a guy I worked with, Mike Carter. His last name. Not you have both names are so strong. Rachel Rohrabacher. But anyway, I'll put some videos up. People will get a kick out of seeing some videos on our Facebook page that will show you as a young kid learning how to play. But thank you so much. It's great to catch up, and I appreciate your wisdom that you shared with our listeners.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was great to have an official catch up, and I look forward to seeing the videos.
Yeah. I've got to come and catch you at a pickleball match.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, Rohrabacher, you're the greatest. Adios.
Bye.
Bye. All right, podcast 180, Rachel Rohrabacher. Yeah, I did give her a hard time. She was RR, rest and relaxation. I was SS, super sensitive. But with that, we'll put some things on Facebook, some clips from our course, Tennis Intelligence Applied. But also, we'll take some clips of her playing pickleball, and that's where I really think there should be a bridge. And we in tennis, I think again, hostility, great word to end it on. That if you can play tennis, you can play pickleball. And I'm telling young people, again, I told this group of high school kids, hey, if you go through this and you do it the right way, right now it's a bonus if you learn tennis the right way that you'll be able to play pickleball. But no, Rachel Rohrabacher, great story and great person. Everybody, thanks for listening. And Rachel, thank you. All the best to you, your family. Adios, amigos. 180, we're in the books.